Okay, so we are moving forward with the next subtopic, and that is reaction in alkanes. Now, if you remember, we talked about chemical properties in the previous lectures, and if we correspond or if we talk about that in further detail, so the chemical properties are actually what reactions are. Because if you remember, then we say that the chemical properties is how these organic compounds are going to be reacting with other molecules. So in short, the reactions are what we call as chemical properties. Okay, so let's talk about bonding for a bit. And an interesting thing here is that this is probably the most interesting part of organic chemistry and the most easiest part if you really know the reactions. It's all about the reactions here in the organic chemistry. Okay, so let's see the bonding. So we know that alkanes are carbon-carbon single bonds, and if I just quickly write this, single bonds, and these single bonds, we call them generally unreactive. What do we call them? We call them generally unreactive. And the reason behind that is these carbon-carbon single bonds are very strong bonds. Very strong bonds. So they cannot be broken down very easily. And because they cannot be broken down easily, their chemical reactivity or just their reactivity is very low. Now, what you need to focus here is that you don't need to confuse this with physical properties, because if you remember what we also said that let me take an example here. So let's say if we talk about C2H6, which is an ethane molecule, and I draw a structure here like this. Okay, if I draw a structure like here this, so now when we talk about chemical properties, we're talking about the CC single bond and the CH single bond, and we're talking about how in this C2H6 molecule, how in this whole molecule these two bonds, which is the CC1 and the CH bond, can change if another molecule comes in and reacts with them. So if another molecule comes in and it reacts with them, that means the chemical property is good. Now, also what you need to differentiate is that we'll study a lot of reactions for alkenes, but even then the general perception is that they are generally unreactive. So what happens in chemical reactions? This CC and CH single bond gets broken, and that is what we call as chemical reactions. Now when we talk about physical properties, so let me just take the same example again, which is C2H6. And when I talk about physical properties and I talk about a container here, let's say the C2H6 molecule is in a liquid container like this. And we know that in liquids, these particles are kind of slightly away from each other compared to solids, right? Solids are very tightly packed, but in liquid, they are just a little far away from each other. So in all three states of matter, there are some sort of forces that are holding them together. So because in solids they are very tightly packed, the forces of attraction are very strong. But in liquids, since there are with some distance, the forces of attraction are said to be what? Are said to be weak. And because these forces of attraction here are weak, when we boil this alkane molecule, what happens is that in the same container now, the particles move more distant, and this is what you call as a change in the state of matter, right? So this here is a physical property. This indicates a physical change. Chemical change is different. This here we are talking about the van der Waals forces of attraction. This you study this in A levels, but here you can just refer to as the forces of attraction. And in the top part, there is a bond breaking and bond making process happening. Okay, not making, there's just a bond breaking process, but that is how it's said in the general perspective. So this is the difference between the chemical and physical properties.